What's up, everybody? You're listening to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James.
We're two guys who also happen to be pastors, doing our best to have open conversations about what it means to follow Jesus in today's world. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Lo-Fi Faith. I'm Mike, and I'm joined by
James.
And
Orlando
for another episode. For those of you who did not listen to our previous episode, first of all,
Shame on you.
Yeah, shame on you. Please listen to our previous episode.
Please do.
But if you haven't got around to it yet, we have our second ever guest on the show, and his name is Orlando. He has flown, again, as far as I know, he's flown from the United States of America solely for this show. So, Orlando, we welcome you again to Lo-Fi Faith.
Sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Well, hang on. Anyway, we'll move right on from that. Orlando, this is your, second time in New Zealand?
Third time
in New Zealand. Okay, I must not have been aware of that first time.
Just can't get enough.
Yeah, okay. That's what we like to hear. Tell me, Orlando, what are some of the things that have stood out to you as you have seen parts of New Zealand?
One thing that stands out to me here in Christchurch is that it's a pretty walkable city.
Okay.
Whereas in the United States,
We don't believe in walking.
yeah, like the United States.
You don't believe it exists, or?
I've never seen it. Not in America.
Yeah, American cities are hostile against people walking.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
the streets are designed for cars.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, whereas here, you can walk just about anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
at least in this area. I don't know about other
Yeah,
areas.
it's quite pedestrian friendly
Yes.
and bike friendly, and I think that there is less hatred for cyclists here in general. I don't know. You can.
Still a bit. But.
Okay, because in America, people see them almost like they seethe with rage when they see a person on a bicycle.
Really?
I don't understand it, but they are actually angry.
Is this
that
like a
they
fairly
exist.
general sentiment?
It's quite common.
Okay.
It's quite common.
It gets taught in school,
Yeah.
the cyclist hatred.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a class on it.
I used to live in Orlando, Florida, and it actually had the highest per capita hit and runs in all of America at the time. And I got hit on a bicycle
Right.
by somebody who did not stop. They hit me,
And they drove off.
left me in the middle of the intersection, and drove off.
Golly.
But you know what? My bike had like a squeak beforehand,
Uh-huh.
and it didn't afterwards. So they fixed my bike. So
Wow.
I've felt very
Moral of the story, if your bike is broken, get hit by a car.
get hit by a car in
The Lord
Orlando,
works
Florida.
in mysterious ways.
We just want to make the disclaimer that none of our listeners should follow that advice, please.
At least not most of them.
Yeah.
Orlando, anything else that has stood out to you about the differences between the two countries?
Other than the seasons being flipped,
Boring.
yeah, that
Continue
is
on.
boring.
They're
Let's
about the
see.
same, other than that. Is that what you're saying? Not a whole lot of differences.
Not a whole lot. Well, there are quite a few recycling habits that New Zealanders have that Americans just do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love how this is something that stood out to you.
Yeah.
No,
So
no.
far, it's being pedestrian friendly and recycling. Just being responsible human beings, not something we're familiar with.
Yeah.
No, in America, it's like hyper individualism. Like there's no sense of obligation to your neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about littering? Like, is that because New Zealand is a fairly conscious about littering and trying to keep, nature areas clean and those kind of things.
Oh, America has absolutely no regard for that. Like you will see people
would-
on the highways throwing all the junk that's in their cars out of
Really?
the windows.
I'm going to disagree slightly with Orlando here. I think this is very regional.
Okay.
America is obviously a huge country, and there are some places like I'm originally from the state of Maine. Maine is very, very conscious of the outdoors and I don't know about recycling, but certainly about litter. So it's quite a clean area, quite untouched in general. Whereas you go to other places, there were places in Georgia that I lived where it felt like it was just part of the norm, like just kind of.
Yeah, most of the Bible Belt in America. Yeah,
You just upset a lot of listeners.
I know.
All 7 of them
I know.
are very angry. They have strong feelings. They're all from Alabama.
I'm going to ask them to sit with that emotion.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
was
Yeah.
good.
Why does that make you upset?
That's really good. One thing I would point out or emphasize with what you're saying about recycling and sort of paying attention. I find it very interesting because I've been to a few parks here in Christchurch where you can't even find a rubbish bin, or they're very, very few and far between. Whereas in the States, all of them, there's rubbish bins everywhere. And yet, even though they're everywhere and accessible, there's more garbage on the ground in the U.S. at those parks most of the time than there are here. So there is something about that civic responsibility or something that there's fewer rubbish bins and yet less garbage on the ground. I find it very interesting.
Yeah, love this. What I'm taking from this is that I'm better than you guys.
Would
that be an accurate summary?
That's what you take from every conversation I've ever seen you have with anybody. So I'm not surprised by this.
It's
but Orlando,
certainly an interpretation of what has been said.
Follow Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James on Instagram to keep up with new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and to join in on the conversation. We're happy to have you back, Orlando. It's been a couple weeks since the last episode came out.
Flew by.
That was a nice way to let the people know that it actually hasn't been 2 weeks. You've really kind of ruined the whole...
I like to keep you honest, James.
Yeah. Well, it's not working.
It never does. Hey.
All right, Orlando, on that note, we would love to delve a little bit deeper. We were talking about emotional immaturity and spiritual immaturity and the connection between the two. How, you are making this assertion. It's not yours, but it comes from someone else, this idea that you really can't have one without the other. If you're emotionally immature, you're going to also be spiritually immature. I would assume vice versa, right? So based on that, could we move to another level? Again, I asked at the end the so what question, which is really important to me because I don't want this all to be just theoretical. So we identify the problems. Cool. It's easy to identify problems. What are we going to do about it? How do we do something to help? So, Mike, I think you had a question earlier that we didn't put into the episode, but it was basically like, what about somebody who is not aware?
Yeah. So you'd asked a good question in the previous episode, James, about, somebody comes to someone like Orlando and says, hey, look, I recognize I'm emotionally immature and my emotions are, controlling and I don't know what to do with them. How do I improve? But I also wanted to ask the question about what about the person who has not got to that point yet? Because I think even getting to the point where you recognize that you are emotionally unintelligent and you're not capable of understanding your emotions and managing them is a big step in and of itself. But what if you haven't even got to that point and you're dealing with someone who is just fully oblivious and still in, I guess, even a state of denial about the value of being in touch with that emotional world? How do we deal with those people? Because I know again, none of what I'm saying is coming from a place of judgment because I have very much been that person in the past. And I know that I have interacted and dealt with a lot of people who are in that same place. How do we deal and approach those people? Any thoughts on that, general thoughts?
Yeah, it can be difficult to work with individuals who are emotionally immature, right? Because to bring up the subject can generate a bit of tension.
Defense mechanisms.
Yeah, defense mechanisms, right? Those are the things that will flare up the moment that one of their pain points or shame points is touched.
Yeah. You get to the shame the second they feel that shame, armors up, claws out, deny, deflect, blame, whatever it's going to be, you're not touching that wound.
Yeah. So I think one thing that could be helpful in more of an organizational context is integrating the idea of emotional health into gospel, right? So helping people understand, okay, like when you accept the gospel, yes, you are saved. Yes, you were forgiven of your sins, but this is also an opportunity for you to experience transformation, right? Dead to sin, alive in Christ. Now, what does that mean? And so presenting it from that perspective opens up the conversation to talk about what sort of transformation is involved. And we could say that becoming or entering the journey of being a more emotionally healthy person is a part of that process. Now, I don't want to moralize being emotionally healthy and saying, in order to be saved, you must be emotionally healthy.
Sure.
But when we're looking at it from a community aspect, we do want to be safe for ourselves and for other people, right? Relationally safe. And becoming an emotionally healthy person allows us to be a safe individual for ourselves and for those around us.
And I think to go along with that, the process of, the big church word is sanctification, right? Being made more like God, which is the goal of a Christian, right? To have our character reflect the one who we follow and worship. Part of that would be emotional well-being, wouldn't it? Emotional maturity. Like if you're growing in spiritual ways, but you're not growing emotionally, you're probably actually just growing in like intellectual knowledge or in how to be a good Christian that ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, and that is I think often, whether it is done intentionally or not, that is often the messaging that is put out, because often when people are invited to join the church, the first thing they're presented with is a set of, who knows, 15 to 30 Bible studies. And the idea that is kind of put to people, maybe not completely so explicitly, but it's essentially like once you go through these studies and you agree with all of them, well, now you're fit to be, in the church and we'll baptize you. That definitely is leaning very heavily on the intellectual side of things.
Yeah, and the I'm trying to think of the word I want to use here. The assumption that is carried when people approach potential converts and say, "Oh, you just got to do these 15 to 30 Bible studies." That posits a particular anthropology, which is you are just a brain on a stick, and if we put the right information in your mind, transformation will automatically happen.
Yeah.
But in doing that, those individuals are not equipped with spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
Like being able to cite the 2,300 days biblical prophecy, that is not a spiritual discipline, right? Spiritual disciplines are being honest in your prayer life, right? Just relaying to God the things that you feel, right? And perhaps we could segue into some specific practices that can help people become emotionally healthy and spiritually mature. So maybe we could pivot to that.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying is, it's not really like if we want to grow in our faith, it isn't just about more and more and more knowledge. It's about more and more and more practice, and part of that practice will help us to also heal. And I would also just go along as we're pivoting. I think that's why, in my work, I've come across a lot of generational Christians, generational Adventists, right, who are also generationally dysfunctional at the same time. And it's like, well, if we have all of these beliefs, why aren't we automatically fixed and healed? Why are these families still so messed up? Maybe just being religious isn't enough. And so what you're kind of giving us now is the so what. So here are some things, some practices that maybe we could do that would help us to grow and heal and break some of these generational chains, because just having the head knowledge isn't enough.
And I think just before we jump into that, I mean, the two things go hand in hand. Like, knowledge is important because let's say there are some people out there who do a lot of practice, but maybe the practice they're doing is based on some knowledge that is actually very unhealthy. And the more you lean into that and the more you implement that, well, it's probably going to be a progression in unhealthiness as opposed to getting to a healthier place. But assuming that, some positive and healthier information is given, what are the right practices that can help us to mature emotionally?
So one of the first practices that can be helpful is just taking time to slow down and notice your inner life, right? So this is something that you would do by yourself. Take a little bit of time, and you could ask yourself the following questions, right? Like, what am I feeling right now? What are some emotions that I've been feeling recently? What have I been avoiding? Right? What activities have I been avoiding? What emotions have I been avoiding? And then also asking yourself, what story have I been telling myself? Right? Because our mind is a meaning-making machine, right? And sometimes the mind tells us a story about our reality that isn't necessarily true, right? If we have faulty information about God, that may lead us to believe that we have to constantly earn God's favor. That's a story that the mind is telling us. And so when we're able to say, okay, I notice my mind is telling me that I have to perform in order to make God happy, that then provides us the opportunity to reframe.
Because we can ask at any time, if we can identify the story, the narrative that we're buying into, then we can ask, well, is that true? Right? Well, based on what evidence? Based on where am I getting this information from? And if we get to the point where we're like, no, this isn't true, this is just a narrative that I'm telling myself, or maybe other people have been telling me, maybe this is a critic in my head. Now you're saying we can get to this place of reframing the story.
Exactly. And that reframing could be based on healthy Bible study, right? Where we're looking at the gospel, we're looking at what Jesus says about us, right? As kind of setting what reality is for us, right? When Jesus says, we are sons and daughters, or there is no condemnation for you, we can say, okay, this is what I'm basing my reality on.
All right, let me ask you a question here. I'm going to be very vulnerable. I love this idea of reframing. It's something that I've been exposed to. I don't know if it's exactly the same as what you're talking about, but something that I do try to do on an ongoing basis is reframe certain emotions, and that's not to deny that they are there. It's to interpret them in a different way. So, for example, fear. You feel anxious or fearful about something that you need to do. Maybe it's career-wise, maybe it's relationship-wise. Now, often I think a natural interpretation when something is scary is to go the opposite direction, right? It's very scary. I don't want to put myself in that place, so therefore I'm not going to do that thing. And one thing I try to do is feel the fear, accept the fear, and recognize that is coming from some part of me, but then go, hey, look, yes, it is scary. Yes, it probably will be difficult if I were to do this thing or lean into this thing. But that's not the only interpretation that is available from this feeling of fear. There is one side to it that is scary and difficult. There's another side to it where I know from past experience that leaning into things that are scary usually has a positive impact on me, that I come out of it with greater resilience, with greater self-belief, with a greater set of skills. It's basically an open door to a new set of experiences that I simply cannot get to if I am not willing to lean into that fear. And when I tell myself these things and I think through these things, when the fear comes, I'm actually able to almost reflexively have those new thoughts and those new paradigms that actually get me somewhat excited about doing the thing that feels scary. Is that a thing?
Yes, it is. And I mean, what it is
Am I
emotional.
crazy?
Am I just completely
Is
insane
this
here?
psychosis?
No, it's emotional honesty.
Okay.
Right? You're admitting to yourself, yeah, a part of me is scared about whatever it is that I'm having to do. However, there is another part of me that is excited about this particular challenge. And so when we're honest with ourselves, we stop running from those emotions, and we are no longer under the power of the emotion of fear. We can say, okay, I can coexist with this emotion and still live a life guided by my values.
Yeah, absolutely. My actions don't need to be determined by this particular emotion, whereas in the past, if I feel this feeling, therefore I do this set of actions. That basically makes the feeling go away by avoidance. But actually, I can feel the feeling, I can lean into it, and I can choose a different set of actions and behaviors that will lead me to a healthier place, to a better place. Yeah, it's powerful. It's really, really powerful stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And really, that's one of the most powerful tools there is, to be able to sit with that emotion and be like, okay, I can coexist with this emotion of fear or this emotion of anxiety. I can be okay with it. And what we're doing is we're accepting the presence of the emotion.
Yeah.
Because we can either accept it or we can run away from it.
So that emotion has a right to be in our lives. It is communicating something to us.
It's a sign. It's a message of something.
Yeah. All of it's communication. And so we can listen, right? We can pay attention to that and then let it exist and then let it go when it's time to go.
You're listening to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James.
What are some other things that, some other practices that you've found maybe useful?
Yeah. So another practice is just engaging in honest prayer, right? And this is kind of, what you were talking about, Mike, a little bit, where we can be like the psalmist, David, right? In his Psalms, he presented to God, the plethora of uncomfortable emotions that he experienced, right? He experienced fear, anxiety, a sense of dread. Like David does not shy away from describing the very uncomfortable experience, the uncomfortable emotions that he had. And we can do the same. Like we can be honest with God, say, God, I am really nervous right now. God, I've got some doubts and I don't know what to do with these things. For a lot of people, they feel like they have to perform for God because they had to perform for their parents, right? They could not present their authentic selves to their parents, and that relationship template then gets superimposed on God, and we feel like, well, I can't present my authentic self to God because he might not like it.
Could be a fear-based thing. Right?
Absolutely.
If God is the decider in terms of where you're going to go, then if I have some difficult emotions, could be anger at God, could be a sense of betrayal, right? Whatever, could be just blind rage. Like these things can happen. Well, I can't express that though.
Right.
Like maybe to somebody I could, but not to God.
Not to God. That
Not to
wouldn't be
God.
right.
He's the last person that I could express those things to.
Which is funny to me, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, if God is who we say He is, all knowing, all seeing, and all of these things, I think about this moment when my oldest daughter was young and she wanted to play hide and seek, and this happens with so many kids. But she'd run around and she'd hide, and I have a picture of one of the first places she found to hide by herself, and she crawled halfway under the bed, and her entire body is in the middle of the floor, like just sitting there. It's visible to everybody, but because her head is under the bed, she thinks she can't be seen. And I'm like, this is a really great metaphor for all these times where we're trying to hide things, not always from God even, but also from ourselves or from other people. But it's obvious, right, that there is a struggle. There is something going on, that the mask is not as good as we think it is. And especially with God, if God is who we think He is, of unconditional love and unconditional grace and unconditional mercy, is willing to bankrupt heaven and earth in order to be reunited with us, that whole idea, right? And that's who we're hiding from. And He can also see everything anyway. We're a lot like those children who are half hidden and missing out on all of the joy and authenticity that we could be having by just being honest about these things.
Yeah, like if God is who we think He is, then not only does He already know what's going on internally, but He's big enough to handle it.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you have a child and the child throws a tantrum, right? You're hopefully, well, maybe not James, but
no, I can't handle it.
but because of your maturity and recognizing where the child is at, you're able to hopefully to manage that in a positive way rather than just losing it and reflecting the same emotions back to them, anger, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think maybe a lot of people, definitely come to prayer with a performative mindset. Yeah, I have to say the right thing. I have to pray in the right way. It has to be eloquent, and it has to be always very respectful and only saying the things that I think God will accept.
Give us one more.
One more. I think one that could be helpful is kind of revisiting your family story, just kind of analyzing, okay, I existed in a particular family system that had some dysfunctional dynamics, right? Every family has dysfunctional dynamics. And some families are healthier than others. And that family dynamic is part of our story. And so being able to identify, okay, dad was emotionally distant, mom hovered over me too much, I can recognize that has had a profound influence on me, on how I view myself, how I view others, how I view relationships, how I view God. And looking at that not from a standpoint of judgment, but compassion and recognizing, oh man, mom and dad must have had their own really rough experiences that shaped them to become people who were just living in survival mode, right? Because a lot of the problematic behaviors that people engage in within the family context are really survival mechanisms. So when we look at it that way, we're better able to understand where we have come from.
Sure.
And when we do that, it's easier to identify the dynamics that we don't want to carry with us into the future.
Right, yeah. We're not necessarily just going along with our environmental conditioning, which we all have, but we're able to stand back and look at it objectively and see the impact that certain dynamics had on us growing up, and then essentially go, okay, I don't think I want to continue that pattern.
Absolutely.
Let me try to find my way to a different pattern. Yeah.
So much of what you're saying here is it comes down to awareness, like actually being
Yes.
aware internally what's going on in our family dynamics, what's going on, in the stories that we've been told or we're telling ourselves what's going on. Just being actually aware of our internal lives, and then also having some measure of willingness and desire to change it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And when you put those two things together, now you're on a journey where you can grow and you can heal and you can mature. And that just because this is what was prescribed for you, this is what was laid out for you, and this is what you were as a child, set up for, doesn't mean that has to be your life moving forward.
Absolutely.
Dynamics can change. We can grow. We can heal.
Yeah.
And we can do a lot of healing for other people by making that decision ourselves.
And I do think that the two things you mentioned are so important, that they're both in place. Not only awareness, but then also implementing the right strategies to deal with whatever you've become aware of. Because I think in 2026, in general, society is a lot more aware of certain mental health issues and emotional issues than they were, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? There's been a lot in the media. I think younger generations have just some more natural awareness than even my generation did growing up. But it's one thing to be aware of something, and then the risk that I have seen sometimes is that once you become aware of something, you can actually just start to identify with that, and you use it almost as a crutch to say, this is just the way that I am, as opposed to going, hey, this awareness is power. If I then go on a journey to understand what can I do to change the toxic patterns that I've identified in myself. So yes, awareness, but then following through on the right practices and the right strategies.
Yeah. Having the willingness to try to do something new.
Yeah.
And then from there, finding the strategies.
Yeah.
to implement.
Not staying in sort of a victim mentality,
Yeah.
a passive mentality. And sometimes the wrong brand of Christianity can keep us there too, right? Where we think that we're in a place where everything happens to us and we can't do anything about it, but that's not how God has created us. We're made to have agency, to have choice, and empowerment, voice, and choice, which is what being trauma informed is really all about. As we get ready to close, I did have a quick question for you, Mike, because you kind of led off this episode saying that you used to be in this place, and now you've been growing in your own awareness and your own ability to heal and become more spiritually mature, emotionally mature. How did that happen?
Well,
You obviously don't have to give us your life story. I'm just curious, what are some principles that could be applicable to other people?
I do think you have to be intentional about it. There were certain things that happened in my life that kind of, I wouldn't say forced me. I think I still could have made different choices. But that, I experienced a level of pain that led to a wake-up call for me and led to me asking some questions about my life and about my behaviors and about who I was as a person. And from there, I think I went on a bit of a journey of exploring this stuff. And there's lots of great resources out there. There's lots of good books. There's lots of good programs. There's lots of great people that you can talk to. But I think you do have to have a curious mindset and a willingness to explore, a willingness to try different things, and also a willingness to realize that the first thing you try is not necessarily going to give you a fix, and maybe not even to think about it that way, right? Maybe you want to, try talking to a therapist. Maybe the first therapist you talk to doesn't add a lot of value, you don't have a lot of connection. That's okay, but don't give up on the process entirely. Keep going. Maybe find another therapist. Get a referral, right? Maybe one of your friends has had some really good value from someone. Go and talk to that person, whatever it might be. But just really adopt it as a process. Think less about outcomes. How do I get to this point of arrival? And rather go, I want to be someone who is constantly growing, who is constantly becoming more aware of my patterns, and who is constantly reaching to be the healthiest version of myself. And if that becomes part of who you are, you will naturally do those things. You will naturally go on that journey of exploring those different modalities, of talking to people, of doing your research. And if you have that willingness to follow through, as we've just talked about, you will experience results over the time. And the more you experience those results and you start to feel the growth and maybe even get comments from other people, and it's really, really satisfying, then you'll be even more motivated to continue that. So that's completely off the top of my head, some thoughts.
So essentially you reached a crisis point for one reason or another.
I did,
which we all do at some point in our lives, and it forced you to choose to self-reflect or not. You took the choice, that you made the decision to self-reflect, had the openness and humility to learn from other sources and to hold up the mirror to yourself, which is quite a painful process I've been through as well. And because of that, it allowed you to grow and to mature in these places. And I think this is really important, and Orlando will give you the last word here, but I think this is important for listeners who might feel stuck or who know people in their lives who are stuck, recognizing that they don't have to be. We do have a choice to grow. It doesn't matter how old we are, how much has happened to us. We can be healthier and better than we were before. It may take a long time. Change is not easy. It's really overwhelming. It's very exhausting, but it's worth it. And so if we're willing to change and grow, we can become both spiritually and emotionally mature. And if Mike can do it, man, I think anybody can do it.
Well said, James. Well said.
Orlando, what would you say is like your final takeaway that you'd like our listeners, our 6 people to really, really focus on?
Well, to all 6 of you all out there.
We just had one person unsubscribe, so it's
We're
now
down
5.
to 5.
Oh, not 5. Uh-oh. Well, to the 5.
That was me.
To the Lo-Fi 5.
Hey.
I will say that the transformation, right, the process of learning and growing happens within the backdrop of the gospel, right? And having a healthy and proper understanding of the gospel can really make or break why you want to experience a better life. If you have an unhealthy gospel that really puts pressure on you to get better in order for you to be saved, you will not experience authentic transformation. It will just be a behavior management system that will always leave you feeling miserable.
Anxious.
And anxious. But when you experience a gospel that starts from acceptance, where it's like you've already been accepted, you've already been loved now, and you can now take actions, from a place of acceptance and love, that better positions you to want to experience a change that gives you that awareness and that willingness, because you're able to say, man, God loves me and God wants good things for me, and I'm going to lean into that by faith, whatever that might look like.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, look, our time is up. Thank you again, Orlando, for being on the show. Thoroughly enjoyed the 2 episodes that we've done with you, and we'll review your performance. And if we think it was good enough, we may invite you back.
Don't call us. We'll call you.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch.
Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, really appreciate what you've shared with us. And
thank you for the invite.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time on Lo-Fi Faith.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Lo-Fi Faith. If something resonated with you today, we'd love it if you shared the show with a friend.
You can catch up on past episodes at plains.org.nz and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be back with a fresh episode in 2 weeks.
See you then.